It has been 3 standard months since the Xyrran Empire declared war on us. We were ill-prepared at first, but our ships defending the borders managed to put up a decent fight, relying on speed and hit-and-run tactics to slow them down. But in the end, they fell to the more heavily armed and strong-armored ships of our now enemy. We had an inkling that the Xyrran Empire was an expansionist race ever since we first made contact with them many years ago. They were not bad neighbors at first. They were decent trade partners, but otherwise were not an overly friendly bunch. I remember when I first met one in our colony. A researcher, he called himself, but I would have thought otherwise at first glance. On average, the Xyrran stood at 1.9 to 2 meters tall, 2 hands, 2 legs, 4 toes, and 4 fingers on each limb. A reptilian with scales either in hues of blue, purple, brown, or red covered their bodies aside from their head that had a short plumage of feathers in similar color. That would be the only likeness they had to us, the Illyrians. Their face was slightly protruding with sharp back-facing teeth that made them quite intimidating. On their fingertips stood sizable menacing claws that would most undoubtedly lacerate any would-be enemy. Oh, how I wished our government had seen it sooner. That all their envoys and traders coming back and forth was just a ruse, a ploy to learn of our strengths and weaknesses. Our race has always been friendly, wanting to trade and talk rather than raid and ravage. Every other sentient species we have encountered have wanted the same, to trade and prosper together. Some even wanted alliances between our species, but when the Xyrran declared war, none wanted to feel their ire and help us. None except our newest ally, the Terrans. Despite only being in an alliance with us a mere 10 months, the Terrans were quick to answer the plea for help and ensured they would aid their allies no matter the cost. Though we are not hopeful that their help will come in time. Their borders are on the exact opposite side of our borders with the Xyrran Empire, and it will take some time to arrive at our conflict borders even with FTL drive. As far as we know, the Terrans are not as technologically advanced as us or the Xyrran. They have not shared much of their technology, and from what I have seen on my data about their diplomatic and trade vessels are nothing special, just average, but I guess it remains to be seen what their military can do. I rubbed my eyes in frustration from lack of sleep. It had been 2 weeks since the Xyrran came to our colony planet. Tiri was much like our home world Aleri, lush jungles 100 meters high with patches of grassland covering the landscape, and our people made the treetops into our beautiful homes. Our meager defense fleet of a few hundred ships were blown away by their armada of 3,000. I almost felt glad that the Xyrran didn't seem to want to glass the planet. Instead, they went for ground assault, targeting our ship ports, grassland, and military garrisons. They landed a large invasion force after the initial strategic bombing, and the fighting was fierce. Our eyes can see far given our avian heritage, and we held out at first, using the terrain to our advantage. But the Xyrran have superb low-light vision and went for assaults during dusk and dawn and pushed us out of our settlements. Now I sit in a hidden military outpost on the outskirts of my hometown, contemplating my options as I have but a few hundred soldiers under my command and roughly 2,000 civilians that we can't abandon, and supplies are running low. The Xyrran are ruthless and take every living healthy Illyrian and put them in chains, to be used as slaves and entertainment for their masses in the Empire. The rest are dispatched and discarded as useless baggage. As I sat and brooded, a young clan member walked into my room. "Commander Xelios, sir," he said. "I have picked up incoming communications directed at us." He was a young adult of our clan, tall for our species, standing 1.7 meters tall, with a curved beak as all adults have and deep sapphire eyes, his feathers gleaming a dull silver as our clan was known for. From his 2 fit arms, perched on a pair of 5 fingers, sat short pruned claws. 2 muscular legs with well-curved talons fused neatly on each of his 8 toes, and strong gray wings were tucked neatly behind his back, itching for some release and exercise. "Is it the Xyrran or other splinter groups of ours?" I asked, wondering how nice it would be to see the young adults fly in the sky, doing our ritual mating dances, not having a care in the world. "No, sir, it is neither. The speech is Terran, sir. He called himself Lieutenant Gray of the Umbra Vanguard." My eyes widened in surprise. "The Terrans are here? Patch it to my device and leave me in private," I squawked. I stood over the communication device on the table, waiting until I was alone in the room, then pressed the button. "This is Commander Xelios of Clan Starstrike. To whom am I speaking with?" The silence was for but a mere moment, but it felt like minutes had gone by. "This is Captain Gray of the Umbra Vanguard 2nd Company of the 6th Battalion Raven Division. Our troops have infiltrated the orbital blockade surrounding your planet. 7 other divisions besides ours have landed in other regions to help liberate your civilians and eliminate the enemy. Our main fleet with civilian aid in tow should arrive by late afternoon your local time the day after tomorrow. My company and I will arrive at your location momentarily." I was baffled they were here. How in the galaxy did they manage to slip that many soldiers planetside? If their military structure is the same as it was in the human history documentary I watched, then that would mean they managed to sneak in 80,000 troops through the enemy. That is not a small number. Our colony world has just over 15 million souls, and we estimated that the Xyrran troop planet side already numbers roughly 500,000. How will they defeat that? Wait, how did they manage to contact us directly, and better yet, how did they find us? Our location was well hidden, and broadcast scramblers were in place, so it would be impossible to locate our signal. "You said you would be here momentarily? When should I expect your arrival, Captain?" I asked as I shifted nervously, waiting for a response. The air started to feel cold. "We are already here," the voice said in a cold, almost robotic voice. It didn't come from the device on my table. It came from behind me. My feathers stood on end, and I felt extreme fear trickle throughout my entire body. I swiftly turned around to see nothing within my room. "What? Where are you?" I whispered, almost too afraid to yell, as I felt from somewhere in the room cold, calculating predator eyes locking on me. From the back end of my quarters, seemingly out of nowhere, walked a figure made out of shadow or blurry black mist in a vaguely Terran shape, roughly a head taller than me. It moved a bit, and the ghostly hue disappeared almost instantly, and before me stood a Terran, clad head to toe in armor, impossibly dark armor with what appeared to be a compact rifle tucked by his side in the same color. It didn't even shimmer in the light of my quarter. It was like it sucked in all the light that bounced onto it. All but one part. The eyes. The eyes glowed in a low blue color. It felt eerie. The Terran walked 2 more steps, then moved his hand to the side of his face, and his visor slid open. I was even more shocked. The skin compared to the usual Terran faces I had seen before, whose skin was pink and rosy, his was gray, ashen even, and his eyes were black. All black, no iris, nothing. And his teeth, as he showed them in his so-called smile, as the Terrans called it, were surprisingly normal, albeit very white, which made his smile even more terrifying. He looked very muscular but sleek at the same time. Like a sprinter and weightlifter fused in one body, he was definitely augmented in some way. Our kind does not dabble in such things, but we knew some of our galactic neighbors did. "Sorry for the fright there, Commander, but I couldn't resist," the Terran said as he made a hand gesture that seemed like a salute. None taken," I said, still trying to get my nerves and mind under control. How did you get in here?" "That is a trade secret of our military, I'm afraid. But the Umbra branch of the military is a special operation unit designed for stealth, infiltration, assassination, and in this situation, terror assault." "Terror? Did I hear that correctly?" Well, they certainly had the looks for that part. So, you are here to help us, correct? To liberate our town?" I asked, still coming to terms with the very frightening-looking alien standing just 2 meters away from me. "Correct," he said as his grin grew wider, making me get a slight shiver. "I would appreciate it if you could give me any knowledge about your town, number of enemies, hostages, layout, and so forth, so we could compare it with our intel," he said with more casual expressions. Yes, of course," I said with more vigor than I would have liked. "We keep the majority of our intelligence in the air room of our outpost so that our scouts can fly to and from it with ease." Indeed, I saw that when we arrived here, quite peculiar, to have an intel center with no roof, but given that we are high in the treetops and you are an aerial species, it makes sense," he said as his face changed to what I assumed was a pondering expression. "Wait, we are more than 80 meters above ground. They don't have wings and their bones aren't hollow, so he should be at least 3 times my own weight, if not more. This made me wonder even harder how he managed to climb up here and without a sound at that. As we walked out of my residence, we were greeted by the vastness of the jungle. Structures lay around and between the thick trunks of trees 100 meters high, with the thick canopy above giving cover over us from any preying eyes above. It was late evening and the sun was about to settle down for the night. Lights flickered on here and there within the housing and platforms scattered around us, making it look like glowing flies were dancing around us. "Your world is quite beautiful," he said as I watched his face give a faint smile as he was appreciating the scenery. "Indeed it is," I said. "Though my home and of course the capital is even more breathtaking. Houses in between the sea of trees as far as you can see, in perfect harmony with nature itself. Then you better invite me to see it when this is all over and we beat those scaly bastards back to their rotten empire, yeah?" he said, with what I could guess was confidence glistening over his face. Oh, how I wished I shared that confidence. It was all but beaten back when our only offensive option left was to harass the enemy scout parties that ventured into the jungles around us. We walked for a few minutes towards the intel room and met a few bewildered and frightened gazes along the way. I calmed every bypasser and told them the frightening-looking shadow man was a friend, which made him chuckle. We arrived at the intel room, which was suspended between 4 large trees. Artificial vines and support beams shot out from underneath it to the trunks of the giants. As we entered, the room was quite empty as night was about to fall, and no scout would want to venture out when night came. An inbuilt defense mechanism of our species, as we had a nighttime predator that hunted us when our species was in its infancy, as well as the Xyrran having superb low-light vision. One officer of mine, an old member of the clan, stood at the central table looking over reports. His silver feather coat almost completely morphed into white, the telltale sign of a very old member of our species. The last scout of today was standing next to him, giving him reports and showing video feed from his mounted camera. "Good evening, Zephyr. How is the scouting going?" I mused as I was waiting for him to look at our direction. The scout noticed me and my companion as I gave our position away and was immediately startled by Captain Gray, but chose to say nothing. Good self-control, I mused in my mind. "Bah," he grumbled. "Nothing good, nothing bad, just the same. Enemy scout parties keep entering and... Holy Sky Diva! Commander, who is that behind you?" he yelled out in surprise. I was a bit disappointed to not see a bigger reaction out of him, but I suppose being a pirate hunter in his younger days makes the nerves tougher. "This is Captain Gray of the Terran military," I explained. "He is part of the Umbra, a special military unit that specializes in infiltration and scouting. He and his soldiers will help us liberate our town from the enemy." "Well, that is splendid," Zephyr said, not really questioning that there was an alien in a boogeyman armor in the room with him. "So, Captain Gray, how many of you are there and how do you plan to help?" he added. "I have 200 soldiers under my command and I think it's best to talk with my lieutenants about our plan here." As if on cue, 4 Terrans clad in the same armor as their leader seemingly fell from the sky. All of us jumped up in surprise except the captain, who had amusement plastered all over his smug face. Who are you?" Zephyr asked in shock to one of the presumed lieutenants who had 2 pointy armor plating sticking upwards from the side of his helmet. "I'm Batman," the Terran spoke, in a very growly voice whilst trying to strike a very powerful pose but looking kinda dorky. "Shut the fuck up, Kyle," spat another lieutenant. "You're lucky that you didn't get into trouble for altering your armor past protocol." Now, let's be civil here." Gray spoke with a bit of amusement in his voice. The captain introduced his subordinates and promptly asked us to show our intel on the enemy within our town. After a brief scan of our database, he nods his head. "Yeah, this is about the same intel as we have on them." Now I felt flustered, although I didn't show it. This was a week's worth of information on our enemy, painstakingly gathered by our scouts over many hours of surveillance, and the Terrans had been here for what? Not even a full day. They had the same amount of knowledge about them within a span of a single day? Preposterous. "Well, it's best we get this started. You can send in your men in the morning, Commander. We should be done by then," the captain said as casually as if he was talking about putting up a shelf. Wait, what? That's it? You're just going to head in there straight away, with only 200 men? You're outnumbered at least 10 to 1. The captain chuckled, then looked up into the darkened canopy above. Well, men, what do you think of our odds? As soon as he said those words, roughly 200 pairs of glowing blue eyes stared back at us from all over the open roof and branches above. Sheer terror flowed through my veins. How? How did they all stay hidden and this close? I didn't even feel anything off. Suddenly a hand landed on my shoulder and I nearly jumped up in surprise. I think we will manage, Commander, he said in a calm, cold tone and continued with, well then, gentlemen, it is time to go hunting. His visor slid down over his face and for merely a second the lights flickered off and once they came back on, they were gone. All of them, without a sound. I shuddered as I felt some pity for the Xyrran. They were in for a night of silent horror.